Welcome to Good Money Guide. Today we're talking to Oliver Plant, head of Bestinvest. Now, as the name suggests, we rank Bestinvest as one of the best places to invest, and as such, they won Best Added Value Investment Account in our 2023 awards. They are in fact one of the few stockbrokers left in the UK where you can get guidance and advice on where, when and what to invest in. From getting a broad portfolio plan overview to specific buy and sell share recommendations. So we're going to have a quick chat with Oliver so that you can hear straight from the horse's mouth what Bestinvest offers, who their investment services are aimed at, and hopefully get some tips on how to be a better investor. So Oliver, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
I thought we'd start with some quickfire questions just to get your sort of ethos or overview of what you think investing is about and what Bestinvest thinks investing is about. So if you're good to go, I'll just give you a topic, couple of options, and you just give a sort of one word answer on what you think the best approach is. So trading or investing?
Investing.
Stocks or bonds?
Stocks.
Okay. And advice or guidance?
Guidance.
Okay. And what do you think is more useful for investors? Best buy lists or spot the dog?
Best buy lists.
Oh, that's interesting. I love your spot the dog list. We'll talk about that later. And in terms of investing, do you think people should be passive or active investors?
Bit of both.
Both. Okay. And final one, when you invest, you do it online or via the app?
I'm more of an app investor these days.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you know, I'm an online investor. I find apps too fiddly. I think I'm showing my age where I have to go and sit down at the computer and make proper decisions now.
I think, for me, the research piece is almost certainly online and maybe often off platform. And then that last pushing the buttons, I think the apps now are so, they're more single-minded and uncluttered. So it just makes it easy to, press the right buttons at the right time.
Do you know, I suppose you're right, actually. I was having a discussion with an app developer because we were getting an app version of our website made. And I said, what's the process involved? And he said, basically what we do is we take all of the clutter away from the website and just fine tune it into things that people are actually invested in. It's probably quite a good exercise in what to do anyway.
Yeah.
But let's move on to Bestinvest. Now, obviously you're an execution only and managed service, but one of the key things you offer is advice and guidance to new and existing customers. Now, that being said, what do you think makes Bestinvest different for investors? Why should people come to Bestinvest for their investment portfolios?
Yeah, great question. So just maybe zooming back a little bit for those of you who aren't so familiar with Bestinvest, we're an online investment platform and coaching service. And I always do tack that bit on because it's one of the differentiators and one of the reasons that a lot of people do come to us. So you can come to us if you know what you want to buy. You want to choose from over 3,000 funds and shares, US, UK, lots of choice out there. But we also offer ready-made portfolios, and we've got a few ranges to suit different styles and investment philosophies. And those are great for people who want to pick something where we do the underlying stock selection, be that of individual stocks, funds, or indices, depending on the different ranges. And a lot of people use that as a core of their portfolio. And then, in terms of the coaching side, and you asked a little bit about coaching and advice, we do both. And the reason I said the guidance side, which is really in that coaching space, is for a lot of people, that's all they need. So Bestinvest clients and those who are looking to sign up for Bestinvest can have a free session with a Bestinvest investment coach. They're all qualified financial planners, and they can talk to you about your investments, your strategy, your financial plans and objectives, and help unpack what good investing might mean for you. And then I suppose finally, in terms of sort of the breadth of what we offer within the Bestinvest service, we also have one-off advice. So if you're looking for a bit of a steer, either to get you started or to invest some cash that you've come into possession of, or you're looking for what we call a portfolio health check. So you're already invested, you just want someone to do the kind of kick the tires, bit of a drains up review, what you should sell or buy and reinvest proceeds with. And we offer all of that, all within the same service.
Okay, so let's just dive into those two aspects and how they're different, the difference between guidance and advice, because they're very different things for very different types of investors. So first of all, what's the difference between guidance and advice from a Bestinvest point of view, and how do the services differ for investors?
Yeah, and the way to answer that is always to start with what advice is, because guidance is what advice is not. So advice is a personalized investment recommendation. In our case here, it might be me telling you what to invest in with a certain pot of money into an individual fund or share or set of funds and shares. So I'm telling you something, and the regulator says I must do that in a way that is right for you, for all of the sort of the facts and figures around you, for your attitude to risk, for how long you want to stay invested, and the growth you're looking for. A lot of factors need to be taken into account. So it's the sort of full works version of what you might consider to be a broad spectrum of guidance. Broad spectrum of advice. What guidance is not advice. So it's not telling you something that's specific for you. It might focus on sort of general principles around investments. Sometimes it's factual information, can be curated for a particular audience, but it's not specific to you. So talking to you about the benefits of ISAs, of SIPs and other pension products, or how you might use your tax allowances to invest tax efficiently. In general terms, all of that is guidance, so sort of good practices. But as soon as you stray into talking about individual products and investment recommendations, that's advice. And the reason I said earlier that I think guidance has tremendous value, we introduced the coaching service about two and a half years ago to Bestinvest. We've had about 6,000 people take coaching, most of whom clients, but some people who are looking to become clients. And often that's all they need. They just want a little bit of extra reassurance. They want to talk through their thoughts with someone, maybe ask some questions. And probably about 90 to 95% of people, that's what they needed. There's still 5 to 10%, even of people who come to a self-directed service like Bestinvest, who say, actually, I like a little bit more. Please tell me more. Please actually give me that personal investment recommendation. And then we can take someone on a slightly more full journey to uncover, really what their circumstances are and what might be right for them.
Yeah, it's tricky to find good advice or guidance. In fact, if you look at social media channels, it's just awash with, I suppose, what is classified as guidance rather than advice. And I do actually think it's just what people need. They just need to steer in the right direction in terms of what products or themes to invest in. But will you tell people whether or not you like the stocks and shares in there? Can I hand you my portfolio and go, spot the dog in this portfolio? What should I have? What should I get rid of? Any recommendations on what to buy?
Yeah, that would definitely move into advice if I were to answer that with a real question. But maybe just unpack a few things there. Not everyone will be aware of what Spot the Dog is.
Yeah. So
it's a publication that we do twice a year, and it's one of the things that makes Bestinvest really famous. And actually, you were asking me to choose between two children earlier when you were saying Spot the Dog versus our best funds list. Yeah. So what Spot the Dog does is it's a very statistical approach. It takes the last 3 years and looks at equity funds and says what has systematically underperformed its sector, funds like it over the last 3 years.
So it's relative to their sector benchmark rather than the overall market.
Absolutely, it's backwards looking. So we look at UK equity income or global equity funds, as in their own sectors. And what's important about that is it's a great way for people who maybe aren't checking their portfolios each day or who aren't so clued up to just, a couple of times a year have that highlighted to them so they can say, I hold some funds, or I may hold some funds that have underperformed in the past. Now, that doesn't mean they'll underperform in the future, but it's just a little bit of extra information, sort of surfacing some analysis for those who don't have, sort of reams of spreadsheets that they use to keep those things. So
good feature to put in the app. Get a notification we've spotted a dog in your.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have to say, spoiler alert, coming soon. Okay. So we've just been sort of building that out. Really, obviously, we've all been on a journey, all companies of digitization. So what used to be a report and primarily paper-based, then went online. Now, if you search for any investments on the Bestinvest website, we tell you if it's on our best funds list, which is our specialists' picks within the sectors that they think have got a good legs for the future. And we also say if anything's a dog fund. So if historically it's underperformed the other funds in its sector. So you asked the question, if you gave me your portfolio, what could I do? I could absolutely tell you what dog funds you've got and what you hold that's on our best funds list. And we're going to be integrating that more closely within your sort of client portal, within your Bestinvest account. The next thing I could also, and not myself, but one of our brilliant team would be able to look and talk to you about your portfolio. So open it out. I might say, Richard, you've got a 30% allocation to Japan versus, Japan being maybe sort of 5 or so % of the global stock markets. So you're overweight Japan or, large cap, small cap, etc. So we can unpack that, and we can do that because as part of Evelyn Partners, which is the sort of leading wealth management and professional services group that the Best Investors of service of, we have all that tools, we have the scale, we have the advisors, so we can build all that out. So could absolutely play back a little bit about your portfolio, but I think the last point you said is, would you tell me what to buy or what to sell? That's when we go into advice territory, and that's when that portfolio health check service that I mentioned earlier would give you that sort of one-off version of saying, Richard, because of your, time horizon greater than 10 years, because you're not looking to use this money, etc. I would be orienting your portfolio, rebalancing it, doing that, and it would look like this, and we can execute that for you too.
Interesting. And do you see much graduation from guidance to advice to wealth management? Do people go on their whole journey all the way through to when they've just got a little bit of money to some serious wealth, and then they start dealing with all the tax issues?
Yeah, absolutely. And really that sort of cradle to grave approach is core to Evelyn Partners. So we can help you really from the smallest amount. You can open an account, you don't even have to fund it, just to get in and have a little look round. You can buy things from £50, so it can really be for someone starting out. I think our sweet spot really is people who are probably graduating to that next level. They've got perhaps a medium-sized portfolio. Maybe it was okay when it was small enough that they could just take a few punts, and it wasn't perhaps money that they were really thinking about long-term plans. It was just a little bit of excess income. So those people who actually then maybe do want to speak to one of our coaches. So you asked about the sort of graduation from the guidance to the advice. So about 5 to 10% of people who speak to a coach actually do go on and take one of the advice packages we offer. A lot more go into one of our ready-made portfolios. So it's a way to educate people. And I guess like any coach, the sort of sporting analogy, to help someone understand, ask them the questions. Are you spending enough time on this? Do you feel like you've got a real grasp to be able to be picking those individual things? Or do you want someone to give you a little bit of help? Do you want someone to be taking care of the day-to-day, stock picking, rebalancing, etc., and keep it in one of the wrappers of our ready-made investment funds?
Okay. So you basically take on all sorts of clients, but the ones your service is most suited to are the ones that have been investing for a bit. They're sort of relatively experienced, but are wanting to take that.
I think it's a great place. Yeah, and we've seen a lot of consolidation this year. People who've maybe had pots all over the place, and who've come and said, actually, if I bring that all to you on the Bestinvest platform, then I can. We haven't talked about some of the features it has, but I can use the analytics that your platform offers, including the projections, to be able to see what my money might be worth, how that might keep me in a comfortable retirement, or what I might need to do in the intervening period when I'm still accumulating to set myself up for retirement. And it also means that the coaches and advisors, they can be sitting there saying, talking about the whole of your portfolio that's with us on the platform.
Okay. I remember talking to Jason about that ages ago, about how your past performance and therefore future portfolio projection is based on the actual performance of the individual assets that you have and have had in your portfolio, rather than just past overall market performance.
Yeah, well, it's actually an evolution of that, really. So your past performance is as was. What we then are able to do on our platform is say, what is your portfolio like? So, particularly it looks at asset allocation. So how much of your portfolio is invested in equities and stocks and shares versus in other instruments. And from that, we can say you're closest to our adventurous profile or defensive or cautious profile. And of course, we do a lot of back testing as an investment manager on the asset makeups that kind of look like yours. So we're able to give you a sort of personalized projection relating to your holdings, to that look through at the underlying level of your funds. Not to say that BP may outperform Shell, but to say actually, because of the amount that you have in these growth assets like equities, this is how your investments might grow. And actually, perhaps even more interestingly, if you make changes, this is what could happen. So we have a simulation feature to say, if you were to take a little bit more investment risk, take perhaps a higher allocation to equities, you might have higher growth, but actually that would come with a greater dispersion of outcomes in the shorter term. So you could lose more, but actually in the long run, you're likely to be in a better position.
I think that's a really interesting tool, actually, because just saying if the market performs 5% year on year, you're going to have X. But if you're, like you said, overweight in Japan versus underweight in the UK, the performance of those two markets are very different in terms of volatility and potential returns, especially if you're throwing US stocks into the mix, which are massively overvalued but don't seem to be stopping at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the really important thing as well is to see that the value of your investments can go down as well as up. It's on so many web pages, but I think people can overlook it. But what you can see on our tool is if you are sort of simulating a higher amount of risk, taking more stocks and shares into your portfolio, then you can see the greater potential loss, the greater drawdown over that sort of 5-10 period before the sort of long run power of those great growth assets really kicks in and starts to outperform what could be sort of shorter term volatility. So it's a really interesting tool that hopefully lets people who've got a really long time horizon see what might be right for them in terms of growth, but also does it in the context of what could happen in the shorter term so that people aren't taking on too much risk.
That moves us actually quite nicely onto themes and what your customers invest in. Do you see specific themes that your particular client base invests in, both when the market's performing well and when it's performing not quite so well?
Yeah, and I was just taking a look actually at what our investors have been going into recently. So of course, a fair few people invest in our Evelyn funds, so our ready-made portfolio funds, because they buy into our house view and to the ethoses of our investment managers. There's a lot of big US index trackers being bought at the moment for obvious reasons. A lot in the news and some really good performance recently, and a lot of people have obviously conviction in the funds that the stocks that make up those indices. We also have a bit of a skew to technology, even outside of those big US trackers. But beyond that, there's quite a dispersion. We've certainly seeing a shift towards passive, but there's still a large proportion of clients in both the back book and in terms of further subscriptions going into active funds as well.
Okay. And where do you think investing is going in the future? Do you think it will remain broadly the same, in that people will realize that really the stock market is there to perform, and by its very nature it is designed to get rid of poorly performing stocks and focus on the well performing stocks? Do you think it's just going to carry on like that, or do you think there are going to be some significant changes in the way we invest in the future?
It's a great question. There's so many angles to it. So I think we might be approaching the point of sort of peak distraction, peak noise. If you're like me, then you've probably, and in fact, particularly given your role, you'll be testing different bank accounts, different investment platforms, and there's so much information, so many signals out there.
Too much.
Yes, certainly too much. And the question is, how can you simplify? So, I'm sure that there'll be services that help codify that information, etc. But I think we might be moving to a space where people actually start to sort of use focus mode, if I can sort of draw that analogy, and try and hone down maybe into a slightly smaller number of providers, whether that's because they're consolidating legacy pensions or indeed sort of multiple platforms or other services, trying to put things in one place, maybe trying to speak to the experts, trying to get that view and sort of pull things together. Because I think certainly that there's the risk of information overload, lots of little pots, effectively, you're fighting against yourself in all these different places rather than bringing it together and doing something that's right for you.
Well, people have certainly, I think, since the pandemic and with the cost of living crisis, everybody has never been more interested in their finances and making sure that they're getting the best performance from them in the most efficient way. So obviously you've dealt with a lot of investors. You see a lot of flow through the platform. In your experience, what traits do you think successful investors have, or what traits have you seen in those who have really well performing portfolios? Is there anything you could say to investors that you've seen other investors do really well?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would bring it to some of the really, sort of straightforward principles of investing. Make sure that your time horizon is long enough that investing is actually right for you. You asked earlier about trading and investing. We're not a platform for day traders. We're for people who really want to take a longer term view, bit more buy and hold. So I think making sure that you are in it for the long term is absolutely right. Making sure you know why you are investing, how you're investing. So what is your thesis? What are you trying to do? Is it that you just want to have some market exposure and some of that sort of more passive? Is it that you think you've identified some themes and you have perhaps a good view because of your own knowledge, your own research, and you want to just sort of bet on those themes? And then I think making sure that you're asking yourself, are those theses still true? So if something's gone up a lot, but you still think that it's going to go up more, can you stick with it and hold it for longer? And if you were not in that stock or that fund, would you be buying it today? And conversely, when we all sometimes have some red in our portfolios, if you've got a loss-making asset, is now the right time to sell, even if that means you'll crystallize a bit of a loss. But if you wouldn't buy it today, tax considerations aside, it might be time to cut that.
Okay, interesting. And final question: we always ask for a book recommendation from everybody, from everybody we talk to. Is there a book or a service that you could recommend that people read so that they can become better investors?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, a lot of it's in the psychology of investing rather than the fundamental principles. There's so much information, so many sources out there, but just being able to use that sort of thinking part of your brain, not be too emotional. So I love Malcolm Gladwell's books, and making sure that you can really be in control and understanding those biases and how your brain works. But then the other thing I would say, sort of literature aside, is do go and speak to someone, whether that's one of our Bestinvest coaches, whether that's an independent financial advisor. There's so much information out there, and the worst thing that you can do is nothing at all, or sort of, and we do see a lot of people who are slightly paralyzed into inaction by not knowing what to do, and it's such a big decision what to do with your wealth. So do go and speak to someone. As a little plug to our coaches, you can speak to them for free, whether you're already a Bestinvest client or you're considering opening a Bestinvest account. And it's not a sell process. They'll give you honest, straightforward answers about your investments and your financial plans and how to be a better investor.
Yeah, no, they're very good. I remember when I was trialing the platform, I did a sneaky test with one of your coaches. It was very informative. Actually, just one last question before we wrap up. If there was one feature or one aspect of Bestinvest, what's your favourite feature of Bestinvest?
Good question. I mean, I think, I know I'm not now giving you two answers, but I'd say that the two things that I find most compelling, one is the coaches and the ability to go seamlessly from that, gentle stages of guidance, a bit of a, I guess, a sort of private one-on-one session, a coach style session, on simple things through to maybe more complex discussions about asset allocation, trends in the market. But also that we at Bestinvest, as part of Evelyn Partners Group, can be helping people with more complex issues. So if you want to do a defined benefit pension transfer, you won't be getting that as advice from your coach, but we can put you in touch with the right person, and all of our advisors can have access to the visibility of your portfolios, and indeed Evelyn Partners clients can see their Bestinvest portfolio. So really it is a seamless service within the group. And then I think on the digital side, I really love the projections that we have. So we have a few goals. We have the ability to sort of set a retirement goal, set your plan, your targets, look at how well positioned you are to meet that, and then simulate the impact of adding a bit of money today or monthly over the course of your working life, and see how close that gets you to your goal. or indeed if you're not yet thinking about retirement and you just want to plan to sort of grow your money for a bit or see where you might be in 5, 10, 15 years time, you can do that too. Just a really simple way to to sort of simulate and play with something based on your actual money, your holdings.
Okay. Well, Oliver, thank you very much for coming in and telling us all about Bestinvest. It's been interesting following you guys over the years, and we hope to cover more of your products in the future.
Thanks so much.
If you've used Bestinvest, or after this you go on to use Bestinvest, please come to the Good Money Guide, leave a review, tell us what you think of them. You can read our thoughts on what we think of Bestinvest. We've given them a full review both on the platform and their app and compared them to alternatives, so you can decide, or rather we can help you try and decide whether or not Bestinvest is the right platform for you. Thanks for watching.